Good evening. I'm calling the Lee County Board of Commissioners meeting to order this first day of 2021. Please stand with me for the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Heavenly Father, as we gather to engage in the business of Lee County government, we ask that you lessen the burden that this past year has placed upon our citizens, our health personnel, our law enforcement, our first responders, and our firefighters. As all have endured the hardships of this pandemic, we ask for a better year to come. We ask that you comfort those mourning the loss of loved ones, and we ask you to bring a quick recovery for those suffering the effects of this virus. As we look to this new year, we are reminded what the Apostle Peter reminds us. For every effort to aid to our faith goodness, and to goodness knowledge, and to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to perseverance godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness love. Let us celebrate by welcoming a prosperous and better new year, and we ask of these things in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. As for the agenda, I would like to remove the new business under 5A. Is there any additional agenda items?
Mr. Chair, is that something we're going to be revisiting, or?
Yes, it's just not today. Do I hear a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Motion has been made to approve the agenda as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? You have the consent agenda before you. Any questions, discussions?
I'd like for the clerk on the minutes, I guess that's 2B. I'd like for the clerk to read the first attendance and incorporate it in tonight's minutes.
Just give me one moment. I'm in the minutes mode in one computer and the agenda mode in the other. All right. For the December 21st, 2020 Board of Commissioners meeting, present we have Ariana Lavallee, Cameron Sharp, Kirk Smith, Bill Carver, and Mark Levick. Absent, we have Dr. Andre Connect and Robert Reeves.
Thank you, Madam Clerk.
My pleasure.
Any other discussion on the consent agenda? Any other questions, Commissioner?
Not me.
Do I hear a motion to approve the consent agenda as written?
So moved.
It has been moved to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Public comments. I understand we have a remote public comment. Madam Clerk.
That's correct. We have a remote submission from Sandy Shover at 2730 Waters Edge Drive in Sanford. She states that with our county having critical community spread and a positive test rate of 14% as of January 1st, having a county commissioner advocate for everyone returning to in-person school is incredibly irresponsible. Perhaps the commissioners are reconsidering school funding for better air recirculation, increased classroom space, hazard pay for staff, or maybe that money should go to our hospitals for ventilators. That's it.
Thank you. Under old business, the capital project ordinance for the multi-sport complex. Mrs. Minter.
Good evening. You have before you a proposed capital project budget ordinance for the multi-sports complex project. We're bringing this before you as the referendum was approved in November. This would just, it's just a preliminary phase of the project, and it's just putting an ordinance out there so that if we do incur any expenses, we have some place to charge it in the appropriation of those funds.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have one, Mr. Chairman. I understand that the way this referendum was written, the board has total control on whether or not we continue with the sports program, with the sports complex, and whether or how it's going to look. We could even move it to a different location or something. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying it's there. Yet when I look at this ordinance, it seems like it had in mind some master plan or something that allowed them to divide the money up into different categories. And all I'm trying to do is make sure that we're not buying into a fait accompli here by passing this particular ordinance, or whether or not it should possibly be reworded so that it allows us to invest in the things that maybe you're talking about today, but maybe not so complete. Maybe I'm misreading it, and I'd like some clarification on that.
You want to answer that, or you want me to? I can take a stab at it, and you can jump in.
The project ordinance can be amended at any time by the board, so you can move funds between general construction, architect and engineering, purchasing the land, the issuance cost, and, you know, we put a contingency in there. So these were our best estimates if the board were to possibly move forward with the existing plan. But those are all subject to change. And just talk a little bit about the process as we see it from this point forward. You know, the first phase, really, the board has to decide when they want us to move forward. If they want us to purchase the land, when we purchase land, and then we have to hire a designer, engineers to evaluate the property, and then, you know, bring you a plan. And when we talked to some folks prior to the bond referendum, we had folks asked that they wanted to have public input into being able to say what elements went into it. So you could always put that in part of the landscape architect's contract, where he has to have public meetings where they can come in and have input on the project. So, you know, as we discussed, yes, you know, if you had money left over here, you know, you could put it over, you know, to do work on existing parks or create little smaller parks. I mean, you're open to anything that, you know, is possible that you want to do, that the board would want to do.
Thank you, Dr. Crumpton. That answers my questions. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Commissioner Lovick?
My comment.
Commissioner Reeves?
At what point are we going to be charged with obtaining the property?
That's if the board commits to, you know, any offers to purchase on property. We plan on discussing land for this project in closed session after the regular session here tonight.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner Sharp, I'm sorry.
No.
Okay. Any other further discussion? Seeing none, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chairman, move to approve.
Motion's been made to approve the capital project ordinance for the multi-sports complex. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you.
Mary.
And I would
Thank
like
you.
to add, just for clarification, any purchase in excess of $500 does require a purchase order that goes through at least my approval, and at certain levels they'll also go through Dr. Crumpton's. And then anything in excess of $30,000 comes back to this board for approval, so it can be charged to the project.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is a notification to the Board of Commissioners regarding change order number 3 from Bar Construction for project number 48360120, Lee County Courthouse and Government Center Complex renovations.
I told Santiago I'd take
all
this
yours.
item tonight. The total change order request is $15,623. This amount has to do with changes in the vault, ductwork changes, the exterior door, the brick and retaining wall, the undercut unusable soils, which was in the back corner of the vault, which was quite a project to get that unsuitable soil out of there, and then the additional light fixtures. There was some question about the additional light fixtures. These are commercial fire grade type fixtures, so they're very expensive, each one, and they were needed with the change in the fire suppression system that we did in the last change order. So this project is moving along quite quickly. We hope to be near 100% complete at the end of this month.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion, questions on the change orders?
I'll move to approve, Mr. Chair.
It has been moved to approve the change order for the courthouse and the Government Center Complex renovations, project number 4836-1-20. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Madam Clerk, it's carried. Moving on to new business, consideration of issuing a letter to the Board of Education recommending priority to be given to students.
All right, Mayor, I got a question then about the In God We Trust before we move on.
Yes, sir.
Not this board, but didn't we cover this in, what, 2013 or 2014?
I believe so,
Yes,
yes.
sir.
Yeah, and I thought it got approved. Wasn't there a condition that if we approved it back then, that someone was going to pay for the lettering, or?
Yes, sir. The
Okay.
group that had come forward said that they would
Right.
pay for it, and I think
Okay.
that's still the proposal now.
That's
That
still
they
a
would
part
be
of the
paying for it.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
thank you.
And as I recall, and I believe this was the former chair had said that they would pay for it in the chambers.
Right, correct.
That never followed through.
That was my recollection.
Getting back to the consideration of issuing a letter to the Board of Education, Commissioner Carver?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've drafted a letter to give us a point of discussion here, and I'm obviously open to your recommendations or concern about it. The big issue here is that, first of all, I attended the last Board of Education meeting, and I know these people are really under a lot of pressure to try to make a decision on how to proceed as far as bringing the students back to school. The most relevant probably piece of data that was there was that they had a survey, and in that survey, the parents were 66% in favor of bringing the children back in some regard, maybe a couple days a week, whatever, under the caveat, obviously, that all efforts were made to keep it safe, the cleaning and all that. The other survey was 66% against, and that was on the part of the teachers. And I thought maybe that was an issue associated with their concern personally about being exposed, and that had something to do with it. But I think the greater concern is that there didn't seem to be a clear plan and approach that they could make a decision on whether or not they were going to feel like it might work. For example, you have a teacher in a classroom who might be aware of the fact that they have students in the classroom that they have to teach. They have some on Monday and Tuesday and some on Thursday and Friday, and then they're doing virtual too. And they're saying, how is that going to work? They're saying, okay, what if I have a person who has diabetes that's a teacher and they can't be here? Who's going to cover them? In other words, the plan doesn't appear to be crisp. That option doesn't seem to be crisp. The other aspect of it that I was concerned about is there doesn't seem to be a lot of balance in the argument about what the unintended consequences are of keeping kids out of school. The obvious one that has to do with a loss of opportunity to learn, and the fact that virtual learning is not the best way to try to teach people is obvious. The other things, however, are the impacts that it have on the families who are trying to monitor their children at home, trying to split their responsibility, especially in families where you have both people working. How do you do that? You know, it becomes very difficult. The discussion that I'm having with you doesn't have to do with any criticism about where we've been or who's done what, but we've got to start thinking ahead of how we're going to get out of this. There's one last piece of information I think is important, and that's the fact that we have 2 private schools, and one that I visited in Apex recently, who have been meeting for quite a while. Now, it has been considerable cost to them in terms of organizing their teachers, creating the space that's necessary, doing the work in order to make sure that things are sanitized, all the kinds of decisions they had to do to make sure that they were doing the best they could in order to protect everybody. And they have succeeded. Even to the point of me going and talking to some of the people of Grace Christian who are more than willing to share some of their insight on some things that they've learned, best practices, if you will, that have given them the confidence to do exactly what they're doing now with great success. So I think if we start thinking about the fact that we've got to get moving in a direction of getting this done, that our support would be twofold. First of all, the moral support is saying, we're behind doing this. There's a lot of chatter out there that's kind of negative, that's not necessarily well educated. And the other thing is that we might consider, as appropriate, some sort of financial support for them should they have expenses that go beyond what the CARES Act would provide, for example, and some other things that are providing some money for them. So it's a complicated question. We obviously are not in charge of this choice. But I would like to, as the Board of Commissioners, come and say, look, we're behind you. We're encouraging you to go that direction. Do the planning that you need to do. Let's support the people that want their children back in school. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any discussion? Commissioner Levick?
Yes, the concerns I have with this is if I were a Board of Education member, I wouldn't know how to take a letter coming from the county commissioners. They're elected officials, in my opinion, you know, by the people also. And I've spoken with several of them. In fact, 2 of them today I saw. Just one of them I was going to do some work for, another one at a gas station, just ran into them. So, but they have assured me that they've been looking into the data. They've been checking with our county health department. And, you know, I would hate that we were presented with a letter from Governor Cooper and we turned it down, and I think that was the right decision. And we're going to listen to our health people and our county commissioner and our sheriff's office, and I think that's the right thing to do. I think as a board, they are elected officials. I think maybe we need to, if they ask for our help, I'm fine with that. But I think we actually need to allow them to be a board, and if we're fully behind them, I think, as far as funding, if they need it, that problem. But I don't want for them to feel like they have any pressure from a letter coming from us as county commissioners.
Commissioner Reeves, comments, questions?
Yes. I heard you say you were in attendance at what board meeting? The Board of Education last meeting or?
Yes, Board of Education.
In
Yes.
December?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Were you a part of it or you just in attendance?
Just in attendance.
It would seem to me that first and foremost, we ought to give them an opportunity to meet and talk about what their plans are, perhaps this month, as soon as possible. And if at that point they feel the need to invite us to the table, perhaps a joint meeting would be in order. But as far as engaging at this stage, I couldn't support that. They have a right to proceed in their own meetings the way they see fit. We don't have to agree with them. And I certainly don't want to offer an open checkbook. I'd like for them to put out their plan of action, quantify it in numbers, dollars, and let us perhaps have a joint meeting. Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp.
Yeah, I would just say that nobody wants kids back in class more than I do, but it needs to be done, you know, safely, and I'm seeing a 15% infection rate, and we've had a commissioner die from COVID. I just don't want it on my hands. They were, you know, those Board of Education folks were elected, and I just think we need to let them do their job, and if they ask us to help them, be glad to do that.
Commissioner Connect.
Oh.
Sorry you came in late.
Yes, I'm sorry, I did too. I was reading some of that, and then I went and did a little more research, but a lot of classes are going back, but they have very few children in them because they get the option, I believe, correct? A lot of classes. So a lot of parents have the option to send their children back, but have not done so as yet, but it's available to do so. I think the biggest obstacle is, for the school right now, is the governor's mandates for going back to school, which they can't, I don't know, but I don't think they're gonna override the government's mandates on who's allowed to go back and when they're not. But I think they are working on that as we speak. Am I incorrect on that?
They have the since you addressed me, I will tell you that the next meeting of the Board of Education, they are making a decision whether or not to move to an attendance-based education for the high school, okay? And there's nothing in the governor's orders that would prevent them from doing that, as I understand it right now.
And what is the plan B?
That they would stay with virtual learning. And the ironic part about this is Plan B is going back partial time, like 2 days a week or something like that. It's just the way you posed it there, Plan B. Can I say something again?
Certainly, please.
I appreciate the feedback. It's definitely not the intention, my intention, to tell the Board of Education how to do their business. However, they're under a lot of pressure, as you rightly identified, and that giving the discussion some additional emphasis on the alternative, I think is important. In other words, we have to look toward the future and what effect it's having on our county. And we're in a position, we are thinking people, we're concerned, we're even in this letter offering some help, not an open checkbook, sir, but some reasonable discussion as to how we might be able to help. And that's the hard attitude behind the letter. It's not to get in their face and tell them what to do, and it even states that kind of thing in the letter. But I do understand. I'd like, as a point of order, to understand what would happen if I recommend we table this at this point. Can I do that?
You're more than welcome to table this.
Okay. Mr. Chair, I would like to table this for today with the intention of possibly revisiting it next meeting.
Is that considered a motion, Madam? Okay. Motion has been made to table consideration of issuing a letter to the Board of Education until the next meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
When is the board meeting again?
The 12th.
12, thank you.
Our next meeting is the 20th. Next item on the agenda is managers' reports.
Yes, sir. I was asked by the health director and our communications director to read part of the press report or press release that was given today. So I will do that. I will not go through all the numbers. except that the positivity rate, the rolling positivity 7-day average is actually 16.6% now, Commissioner Sharp. So it did tick back up a little bit. But the Health Department continues to administer the COVID-19 vaccine to individuals in Phase 1 group of the state's vaccine rollout plan. This includes essential health workers that have close contact with COVID-19 patients, healthcare workers administering the vaccine, and the long-term care facility staff and residents. So if anybody is eligible, they can contact the Health Department and get signed up, and that number's 919-718-4640. So the state, some areas of the state are making plans to move into 1B. We are probably going to be making those same preparations, but we will not be into actually doing 1B vaccinations probably until around the 1st of February, because we still got to get the 1A group through the second round, and we still have a lot of 1A people that need to be vaccinated. So the clinic this week, is it full, Heath? It's not full. So people could still sign up who are in the 1A group, and the clinic this week is, you have to sign up in advance, and it's going to be at the Civic Center. So be happy to answer any questions to that. Go ahead, Heath. Yes, sir.
Can you clarify cost too?
Sir?
Cost.
It's free.
It's free, yes.
It's not necessarily a sign-up. It's more that we're registering those individuals. There's two parts to this. The essential workers, we had to get line lists from the businesses here in the county to be able to put those into the system. Once they were typed into the system manually by our staff, that person would get an email from the state saying that you need to fill out this, I think it's 3-question questionnaire. And at that point, the state platform tells you what phase group you're in. So that is part of what the nurses are doing right now, is actually taking those line lists from different dental offices, funeral homes, physicians' offices, and having to enter them manually just so they can get those emails back out. There's not necessarily an appointment for Wednesday. There is just going to be a drive-through clinic that we will set up starting at 10, and it'll go until 2 p.m. But
Now this you said was 1A, right?
yes,
Which physicians fall into 1A? Optometrists?
yes,
Yes. Okay, yes. Thank you.
yes, sir.
So starting Wednesday at 10.
Yes, we did have one last week in the parking lot at Hillcrest, and it was overwhelming, the response. But we have quite a few more that need to be vaccinated at 1A group.
And then there's the follow-up vaccine, correct?
There is Moderna's 28 days later, and Pfizer's 21 days later.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I do have one question,
Yes, sir.
and it was posed to me from medical professionals. Is the initial test, if an individual has an initial test that's positive, and they come in for a subsequent second test, is that test counted as an additional
No, sir.
positive, or it's still under the first test? Okay,
It's a
thank you.
positive per person, not per test.
Okay,
So
Thank
we
you.
have had some individuals who have tested positive twice in the last 9-10 months. But they still count as just one case.
thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions?
I got one.
Yes, sir.
What age group is 1B?
75 years of age plus. I'd have to get the infographic out for the others. That's been the
Okay,
most.
well, I ain't got the, what's the next group?
65 and above for
Okay, I'm in that, so let me hear that.
for individuals with a chronic condition. I think that's correct. Forgive me. I think I've answered emails all day from 75 plus, we had a good response. We even got some from
Good.
Lee County, Florida, that we've had to clarify. So,
Everybody
I
wants
got
to
some
hear.
I got some dandy emails. Yeah,
Geographically challenged.
group 1 and group 2, actually, which is interesting. They have subgroups, but the subgroup is, the first is age 65 to 74, regardless of health status. So, and then group 2 is 16 to 64 years old, with high-risk medical conditions. Those are all in stage 2.
This is one man of color you can count on coming when it's time, okay?
We will vaccinate all that come.
Okay. And get busy.
And we've got the space now to do it, so.
All right.
Any other questions of our health director? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
As of this morning, we're down to 4 employees who are positive, down from the 8 from 2 weeks ago. We only have 5 people in quarantine now versus the 20 we had 2 weeks ago. So hopefully everybody stayed home for the holiday and was smart, and that's why our numbers are down. I'd like to get the board to start thinking about our board retreat at the end of the month. Typically, we get agenda items or departments the commissioners have interest in wanting to maybe possibly hear a presentation from. And I was just writing down some items today. You know, it's typically our budget kickoff, so it's, you know, need to discuss some, you know, where we stand year to date with the current budget. Also discuss, since we have 2 new board members, how our debt service fund works along with our capital project fund. Also go through the capital project lists and discuss our revenue forecasts for next year, because we have missed our revenue forecast pretty badly this year. In a good way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In a good way. I'm looking at the finance officer. So we got our sales tax revenues today. We'll be giving a report for October. We'll give that at the next meeting, but our numbers were very good again. And like I said last 2 weeks ago, I can't explain it. I just, you know, the state sales tax revenues are up 5.5%, and we beat that by a lot. So there'll be something good for us to discuss at the board retreat. But if any of the members want to call me or Lisa and have an idea for a presentation or an idea, we're inviting both Representative Sauls and Senator Bergen to come on Thursday evening to meet with us. And so you might want to be thinking about legislative items that you want to discuss with them if they can attend. And that's my report, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question for you, if you don't
Yes, sir.
mind.
Yes, sir.
I don't know if you covered it last month. A couple of months ago, I called Dr. Crumpton to discuss the Horton pool, because at the time, we initially talked about the, what do you call that thing? Splash pad. In a meeting when the city was trying to decide if they were going to do one, I heard the number, the cost for the splash pad was $250,000, and the pool was $500,000. And at that point in time, I felt like if I could vote to save $250,000 and just do a splash pad, that would be fine with me. I since learned that the splash pad was over $400,000. So I called him back and asked him if he could revisit that whole process. And I don't know if you've already covered that or not, or have you?
No, sir, I have not covered it with the board, but that is on the part of the capital project plan to discuss at the board retreat, which, you know, that's part of phase 2 for the master plan for each part. So we plan on discussing it at that point, but I'd be glad to discuss it now if you want to discuss it.
Please do.
All right. Now, we have met with, make sure that we have Joseph Keel at the meeting at the end of the month, because Joseph knows most of these pool people from his work that he did in Siler City. But we've had about 3 contractors come and talk to us about the Horton pool. The pool has actually been preserved in a lot better condition than what we thought. And the pool itself, there'd have to be some modifications to it, but the bathhouse is something that a contractor could work with and renovate. It would not have to be torn down. The big issue is the pump room. You know, there's a lot of things that have to be repaired inside the pump room to make the pool operational. You know, we don't have any solid numbers, but the contractors are working on it to give us some estimates, and then also estimate on what it would take to just basically cave in the pool and then put a splash pad over the top of it. The best idea one of the guys had was a pool and a splash pad. You know, instead of having, they don't do kiddie pools anymore, so they do little mini splash pads.
Right.
I said, well, give us that one. We want to hear about that one as well.
Right.
So the only concern we have ongoing with pools, it's not just a Horton pool, but is lifeguards. And for the second year in a row, we had to close early because of the lack of lifeguards at the end of the year. So we're going to just end up discussing with Joseph a plan on how we can get certified lifeguards in place and keep the pool open longer at O.T. Sloan, and how we could staff the Horton pool. So we're working on those things, you know, trying to come up with ideas for phase 2 of the parks.
Yeah, when I learned that it was going to be over 400,000, and the fact that it was going to be limited to, I think, kids 12 and under, I'd already envisioned myself being in that splash pad. And I said, I can't even go to the splash pad, so I'd rather invest in the splash pad pool idea. And I just want to throw that out so that at the right time we can discuss it again. We can get more for our money. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lovick, any questions of the manager's report? Commissioner Sharp?
No, thank you.
Commissioner Connect? Commissioner Carver?
No.
All right. Okay. Moving on to commissioners' comments. If we can, prior to going into closed session, Commissioner Lovick, comments, sir?
Just hope everyone had a great Christmas and Happy New Year to everyone. And again, glad those numbers are going down for us. Maybe those 11 days off helped too. So.
They did.
Thank you guys again for what you do for us. You probably hear that from me a lot. I started out, like I say, in the fire service, so I know what it is to start and work up. And so I know it's important to hear things like that. We can't give you all the money we'd like for you to have and employees, but just thank you so much for the job you do, and each and every one of you. And look forward to a great 2021.
Thank you. Commissioner Reeves?
Thank you.
I hope 2020 is gone for good. Please, God. Thank everyone for their concerns, and I hope you all had a great holiday period. Glad to see you back. Glad to be back myself, surprisingly. But, and I want to thank staff again for all the work that they do for this county and this board. Thank you.
Commissioner Sharp?
Just ditto on what Commissioner and Commissioner Lovick and Reeves said. Thanks to everyone.
Commissioner Connect?
Hope everybody had a great, safe holidays, good Christmas and New Year's, and it is good to see you back, sir. I'm good, thank you.
I was just thinking how the Lord has been blessing us over this holiday period. Even though we have these challenges, I guess in my small area of influence, I've been really blessed. My family is doing well, and I'm trusting that that's happening to each of the members that are here. The only other thing that I can think of has to do with the issue of the sports complex and my concern about whether or not our decision-making is making it difficult for us to make sure we have access to the land that we're concerned about. I'm not sure how that fits in. I'm not smart enough yet haven't been here long enough to understand how we might be able to expedite some sort of discussion about it, possibly at the next meeting. But I hate to be handed a decision that we may not have wanted because those owners decide to give it to somebody else. So I'll be seeking some advice on maybe how we can possibly move our decision-making process up, even to the point of possibly giving some encouragement to the people who are going to be making these decisions for us, especially the ones that are going to be donating. Maybe if they knew we were trying to really solve the problem, they might be of a mind to not jump at some other option. Again, I just say that in an effort to keep our attention on it and realize that the time is ticking away, I think. We need to make a decision. I'd like to echo the whole idea of the fact that we are dependent upon the staff. Not only are we thankful, I found out in the short period of time that I've been here how important you guys are. And I'm very thankful that you answer the phones and promptly come back with intelligent responses that answer my questions well. And I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I wish to echo everyone else. Welcome to the new year. We certainly hope it's more prosperous and healthier than the past one. And if all works out, we'll be there. And trust everyone had a wonderful holiday season with Christmas and New Year's, and anyone celebrating the Eastern Orthodox is coming up. So thank you very much. Again, the staff, can't say enough. Heath, your staff is in my prayers daily, as well as everyone else that works for the county. And we do have, unfortunately, lost members of our staff as well as a former commissioner. So this is not something to play with. We have to be vigilant and protect ourselves. That being said, Commissioner Sharp, if you would be so kind, sir.
I move that we go into closed session per North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A5 to discuss the acquisition of real property.
Motion's been made to go in closed session. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. We're now in closed session. We'll need these packets back.
That's the contract?
It's the other one, sorry.
Is the audio visual back up? Audio visuals back up?
Thank you.
Back into open session.
Mr. Chairman, can we add I move that we add an agenda item to continue a conversation about the multi-sport complex that could not be discussed in closed session.
Motion's been made to add to the agenda discussion of the sports complex. It was not discussed during the closed session. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried, Madam Clerk. Yes, sir.
The questions I have have to do with how one makes an ultimate decision on what direction we're going to go. And maybe investigating ways that we can get those kinds of things on the table. I will tell you, as a result of the campaigning that I did, there was a question of physical responsibility and whether or not we were considering the investment of $25 million at the expense of some other things that are on a higher priority. It seems to me that that might be something that we can discuss at the end of the month at the retreat, I presume. Okay.
Yes, sir.
The other thing that I think is most important, however, is that there's a number of people who feel like, gee whiz, you've forgotten us. We were talking about improving parks, and Commissioner Reeves talked about that, the question of Horton Park. And I was there when those discussions were made, and there were people that were concerned about whether or not we're going to do a pool and all that kind of stuff. But there are other people that I don't think are going to have access to that park out in a more remote location, and that if there was a possibility to think about using a portion of that money, that $25 million, to improve the parks that we have, that might be a good approach. Again, we don't want to cut the funds short and fall short of being able to achieve what we want to achieve. I understand that. And the last item would be, are there really viable options for such a concept somewhere else? And I understand you're working on that. The reason I'm mentioning them in open session here is that I just asked my fellow commissioners to realize that there's an attitude out there that doesn't necessarily say, okay, let's just go ahead and do this. And there are good reasons. And maybe our conversation at the end of the month might be appropriate, or me talking to you would be fine. Again, what I'm trying to say is I feel constrained sometimes in the way we're doing business, and it's hard to get communication out unless you say something. I'm not sure how people understand how you're feeling. So that's why I'm mentioning it at this point. Thank you for listening.
Well, our other park projects has nothing to do with this bond referendum.
Correct,
Correct.
those were already
Those are already,
funded.
yeah.
Well, the
I
first
thought that-
phase,
I
the
thought that
first
was
phase,
one of-
yeah, the first phase is, of those projects are funded. So
Right.
how we go through phase two and then out at OT Sloan, how we get to phase three are, future discussions. But, whether I would say that, strategically, as we look around, to where all our parks are, we're pretty well, at least around the city limits, then if you include Stanley Park, we're pretty well located, around. Whether people can get transportation there or not, I kind of look at, where we're currently doing sports, and they're getting transportation there. For team sports, we can't put the type of fields we want for team sports, in every neighborhood. Most of the stuff that's like Kiwanis Children's Park is more of a what I call passive park, where people can come and just enjoy a day, or, the Kiwanis Family Park, big fields, and, splash pad the city put in there, and the walking trails and that kind of stuff. So it's a little bit different when you're trying to attract, bigger sporting events and do something. I look at Sassel and the numbers that they have and the number of kids we're trying to serve there. We just don't have existing property where we can do that. And then, talking in general about property, between economic development, the future for schools, the future growth, we're always looking at property that would be good for our use. And whether it be for additional parks or this park or anything like that, we take a look at it. And we probably have one of the best GIS directors in the state, in Don Kavaskets, and if he ever sees anything, he'll shoot it to me. He'll shoot it to me and say, hey, this is a good site, you maybe want to put this in the back of your mind for taking a look at in the future. Maybe main convenience center site or future, school site. And that's one of the things we will have to discuss with the school board in the future is, with the growth, we, need to start thinking about those types of things with them. I still don't think we'll be ready need a school for 5 to 7 years. That's my opinion based on growth numbers and ADM decline, which I feel will change in the future as the homes are being built. And then I understand the prudency of when to borrow money, when to spend the money, and that we have, folks in the county that due to the COVID are struggling to pay their tax bills, and they're looking for some relief. And I know that's going to be part of our discussion when we meet with the senator and the representative, because there are groups already contacting the legislature about relief, and I'm sure they'll end up looking to us to help try to provide some type of relief as well, and the best relief is lowering tax rate. So trying to lower tax rate and spend on these projects at the same time, we have to be prudent and be patient and try to spread things out over a couple of years. And at the board retreat, we'll show you how we think we can do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Motion's been made to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much.